Hi everyone, it's me, Sandy Cruz of Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. For years now, I've been bringing to you conversations about wellness from experts from all over the world. Whether it be suggestions in how you can age better, biohacking, alternative wellness, these are conversations to help you live your best life. I want to live a long, healthy, and vibrant life. Never mind all those stigmas that as we reach midlife and beyond, we're just going to shrivel up and die with some horrible disease. Always remember, balanced living works. I really look forward to this season. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have just such an amazing guest. And this is such an incredible conversation. It's going to be about 2 hours long. So buckle up, my friends, because Dr. Amie Hornaman and myself are going to go pretty deep on thyroid health. We are also going to go very deep on things that can go wrong and that have gone wrong. And I'm going to preface this conversation by saying it's not a slam on Western medicine. This podcast is not about that. But it is a lot about health advocacy, critical thinking and analysis about your own health and deciphering what's right and what's not right for you. It's a really emotional podcast because Dr. Amie Hornaman interviews me and then I interview her, and we both have our health stories that brought us to where we are today. And it's emotional for me because on this podcast, this will be the first time you're going to hear about some of the things that really went wrong with my health and where a lot of things it was just such a massive snowball. And it's really emotional for me because tied to a lot of those health challenges was a lot of shame. And listen, not everybody needs to go out there and tell everybody about what health challenges they have, but I know that my purpose on this planet is to use my megaphone and to tell, well, as much as I feel comfortable about, my health journey and the health journey of others that I know about so that that can help you in your own journey. That's why I do what I do. And Dr. Amie Hornaman does a lot of good out there. She puts a lot of education out there for free. Go follow her. She has an incredible podcast, the Thyroid Fixer Podcast, and I was a guest on hers at the end of summer. So go subscribe and follow to her podcast as well. And I'm going to ask you one thing. I'm going to ask you to share this little bit lengthy podcast episode with someone else who might benefit from this episode. There's a lot of nuggets in here. Dr. Amie is a wealth of information. And I think that the whole point of this is not to tell you how things are for you and about your health journey, but it's more about motivation for you to really take charge, as much as you possibly can, of your own health. And don't leave your entire health in the hands of anyone, because nobody knows your body better than you do. I can tell you that much. Be sure to hit that follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast so that you get a new episode each and every week. Also, follow me on all of my social media channels, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, Threads, you name it. I'm pretty much there. It's Sandy K Nutrition everywhere. Also, I did release my Essential Thyroid Guide in March of this year. I was actually just looking at the stats. I've sold a whole 240 copies. Now, I self-published this because I just wanted to get it out there. I didn't want to hear somebody say, don't do this, you can't write this, you can't do this. So that's why I put it out there. And I want to make it clear, this Essential Thyroid Guide is not a clinical book. I've gotten some feedback on there. The people who understood it to be as it was, which is simply patient advocacy and education, just so that you really start to understand your thyroid gland and its importance. That's what this guide is for. Also within this guide, I provide you with the necessary labs that you need to ask for, approximate ranges that are healthy ranges, and so much more. It is short, it is concise, it is not a clinical book, but it is available on Amazon anywhere you buy through Amazon. The last thing I am going to ask is that you check out my Substack. So many of you who follow me know I am an English literature graduate, and writing is my first pleasure. I've always loved to write. And so I've really started to write more explorative articles, short essays, if you will, on Substack. It's sandycruz.substack.com, SANDYKRUSE.substack, SUBSTACK.com. These articles are more like personal stories, stories that I know of, intertwined with some amazing tips and tricks to be preventative with your health through natural means. So go follow me on Substack. I'm getting quite a great little community, and look out for a book from me. That's all I'm going to say. Sometimes you got to keep things quiet until you really know that your dream is actually coming true. So with that, I am welcoming Dr. Amie Hornaman. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Sandy K Nutrition, Health and Lifestyle Queen. Today with me, I have a special guest. Her name is Dr. Amie Hornaman, and she hosts the top-rated podcast in medicine and alternative health, The Thyroid Fixer, with listeners all over the globe. She is the founder of the Institute for Thyroid and Hormone Optimization, an organization with transformational proven approaches to addressing thyroid dysfunction and supporting people in their returning to full health. Dr. Amie is also the creator of the Fixer supplement line, which I can't wait to talk about that, which offers revolutionary proprietary supplements that are changing many people's lives. Dr. Amie is a woman on a mission to optimize thyroid patients worldwide and give them their lives back. And today we're going to talk all about thyroid optimization from a functional perspective. And it's very different from a Western medicine approach. And everybody who's listening, you guys know how much I love to talk thyroid. So with that, welcome, Dr. Amie. Thank you for coming.
Hey, Sandy. My pleasure for being here. My pleasure.
Yeah. So, of course, I'm going to ask you, why are you so passionate about thyroid health?
Well, because of my own pain to purpose story, like many of us have that land in this space, right? So, and like many thyroid patients, many of your listeners, I was misdiagnosed, and I was misdiagnosed 6 times. So my symptoms started occurring about 20 some years ago. And at that time, I was getting ready for a bodybuilding competition. And I was doing figures. So I was on the feminine side, but you still had to prepare by pretty strict dieting, fish, chicken, broccoli, asparagus. You're going to the gym once, if not twice a day, really with the goal to get your body into a lean, athletic, but yet, shapely and muscular, low body fat state. And then you step on stage in a bikini, which actually, when I say it out loud, sounds a little bit crazy. Probably is. But I really liked the challenge back then. I really liked that challenge of getting my body into that particular state and then beat it. So I had done many of these. I did so many shows, so many photo shoots that I dieted down for. This one particular show I was getting ready for, that is when my body rebelled against me. And I didn't know what was happening at the time. I had to step on the scale weekly to report back to my coach, because we all need a coach. Can't think for yourself when you're doing these things. Can't think for yourself on a day-to-day basis about what you're eating, right?
Yeah.
And I would report back to him, and every week the scale would go up. And I mean 5 pounds, 10 pounds, then I'm up 15 pounds. And I didn't know what was happening. Like I'm blaming myself. I'm thinking maybe I'm eating too much. Maybe I need to work out more. And then you start taking this judgment thing on. Everybody at the gym is judging me. Oh my God, they're looking at me thinking, oh, she must be eating the donuts. Maybe my coach is thinking I'm not even following his plan. I'm totally going off the rails. When in reality, I was doing everything and then some.
Mm.
So by the time that scale hit 25, and I'm
Wow.
5'2".
Me too.
Right?
Yes.
So I always tell people, what if I were to go get a 25-pound weight, and strap it around your back and tell you, go ahead and walk around with this all day long? You'd be like, you're crazy. My back's going to hurt. I'm going to be tired. Well, that's exactly what we feel like when you strap on an extra 25 pounds. It's not even, no, it doesn't work. The body doesn't like it. And my body was literally rebelling against me. There was nothing I could do to stop the weight from coming on. Nothing. So what I did do is what we all do. I went to my doctor. And I went to my doc and I said, listen, doc, here's what's happening. Oh, by the way, I'm really tired and my back hurts too, and my hair's falling out. Can you tell me what's going on with me? He says, you're normal. Everything's fine. Now, Sandy, I wish so badly I could go back and see the labs that he ran on me, because I guarantee you it was TSH and free T4, right?
Yeah.
There's no way he ran all the labs. No way.
No.
So, I did the whole second opinion thing. I left there and I was frustrated, but not hopeless yet. So I went and I said, okay, I'm going to get a second opinion. Went to doctor number 2, and I was told it's all in your head. So then I left there and went to doctor number 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6. Doctor number 6 actually touched my throat and said, swallow. I was the first doctor to lay hands on my thyroid gland. And she says, well, you have a goiter. I'm feeling something in there. We're going to get an ultrasound done. But to me, it appears as if you have Hashimoto's. Here's a pill. And I was excited. I left her office. I'm like, thank God, somebody's finally telling me what's going on. Now I have a diagnosis. Now I have a name for it, and I have a pill for it, and everything's going to be fine. And then I gave it 5 months, and it wasn't fine. And I didn't lose a pound, and I didn't feel better, and my hair wasn't growing back. Everything was just continuing down the downward spiral, along with my mood, my frustration, self-blame, self-loathing definitely came on. I would cry in my car. I would pray for a different answer. And then sure enough, I kept hearing the name of this functional medicine guy. And when you hear the name of somebody a couple different times, like 3 times, right? It's God, it's the universe, whatever your belief system is, telling you and speaking to you. And you kind of pause and you go, okay, I will listen. I've heard this name 3 times. Now I will go. So I went to see this functional medicine practitioner. And actually back then, we didn't even use the term functional. I want to say it was integrative. It was naturopathic. So he was a naturopathic doctor, and he had his pharmacy degree. He was an alternative practitioner. He had all these degrees. The most important thing is he sat down with me for 90 minutes. And that was 5 million times longer than any conventional doctor had ever spent with me, right?
Yes.
Going to conventional medicine, it's a 5 to 7 minute visit.
Yeah.
And then you're out the door. So he spent 90 minutes. He went over my labs. He drew labs for everything. I mean, I had 10 vials of blood coming out of me. Sat down with all my labs, painted this picture, and said, oh, look, this is low over here, and this is high over there, and this is what it means. And I know it's still in the standard lab value range, but because of this and because of that, and because of your symptom, here's what's going on with you. And here's what we're going to do to fix it. So we're going to change your thyroid medication. I was given, of course, T4 only, which doesn't work. It doesn't work. So then he put me on Armour and he added a little bit of T3 and he changed my supplements, and my nutrition was okay because I was on point with that. And that's what I was telling all the doctors. Listen, I got the nutrition part down. It's everything else that's going on in my body that no one could figure out. And he fixed me.
Yeah.
And from that point on, I became his apprentice. He was my mentor. I changed careers, went back to multiple years of school after that. And here I am helping other people because it needs to be done. I mean, it needs to, people need help and they need real answers. And my God, if I would have stopped at doctor number 4 or doctor number 5, which is a really decent amount of doctors telling you the same thing, that most people would be like, I mean, they've got to be right. They're doctors, 5 of them telling me I'm fine. I've got to be normal. I've got to be fine then. But I wasn't. And that's the message that I want to send out to everyone, that you absolutely can get optimized and you can get fixed, and don't ever give up. And you just got to keep plugging away until someone gives you an answer.
Yeah. I mean, everything that you said just there, I can relate to so much. Like everything. And I think it's difficult when you keep going back, because like, you know how it is, like you keep going back, you keep telling the story. And I can remember exactly how I felt. And I align so much with you. And it was, for me, it was different order. For me, it was after I had my thyroid completely removed, and I was told that I would be healthy and normal and fine just by taking that T4 only, and everything would be exactly the same. So I think it's really important to outline, because I don't think people understand. I remember when I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, this was in 2011, I actually didn't even know how important my thyroid was. I was like, okay, I know it's something in my neck. I think a lot of people don't realize how crucially important this little gland is. So maybe if you could outline why we should care. Everyone should care.
Yes, absolutely. Doctors should care more and pay more attention that it is the master gland. So your thyroid is the master gland of your body. It runs the show. I mean, it controls your metabolism. It controls your GI motility and dictates whether or not you poop every day. It controls your brain function, your heart rate, your blood pressure, your body temperature. It literally controls your entire body. So why wouldn't we focus on it first? Why wouldn't we? But we don't in conventional medicine. Instead, mainly women are hit with hypothyroidism. So I don't want to just rule out the men, but I'll say a woman will go in to her doctor and she'll give the laundry list of symptoms that is hypothyroidism, and she'll get an antidepressant, a sleeping pill, a PPI, a statin. I mean, she'll get all the Band-Aid, maybe even some birth control. And it doesn't matter if you're menopausal, here's some birth control, right? We'll get every Band-Aid medication under the sun instead of focusing on the master gland. And I'll just say one other thing. I gave a talk to a group of integrative wellness physicians years ago. And the talk was basically to educate them on the thyroid, because even though they were integrative, they really didn't know the thyroid. They came from conventional medicine, entered into this integrative practice, and they were still learning. So I was in there talking about all the different tests that should be run and the importance of reverse T3. And then I moved over to why are we in the simplified box, as I call it, the T4 only box? Why are we in this box? I said, if somebody comes in and they're depressed, you'll give them an antidepressant. If that one doesn't work, you'll give them another one. If that one doesn't work, you'll give them another one. Then you'll stack on an antipsychotic, maybe an anti-anxiety. Let's throw in a benzo and a sleeping pill for this person. But you won't use anything more than one medication for thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
And there are plenty. And the thyroid is nuanced, and we can combine and we can change ratios and we can go T3 only. And there's so many things that we can do to optimize someone where they wouldn't need all those band-aids. The one doc raises his hand and goes, that's all we've learned.
Yeah.
So that's what you're dealing with when you go to conventional medicine doctor after conventional medicine doctor. You're dealing with what they have learned, and we can't expect them to do anything different if that's all that they know.
Yeah. I mean, that's just so perfectly put. And I'm always of the thought that thyroid health it's one of those foundational things. You gotta look there because it is that thermostat. So it controls everything about your life. Technically, if you were to look at, are you happy? Are you sad? Are you hot? Are you cold? Are you angry? Are you right? Are you jittery? Do you have heart palps? It controls everything. It is that thermostat. So why wouldn't you start with that as a foundation?
Right.
So I couldn't agree more. Now, here's the other caveat to this. I don't know what it's like where you are, Amie, but here we have this range of 0.4-ish of a TSH to up to 5 sometimes. And I know personally, I feel horrible. If I go over 1.5 in my TSH, my hair starts to fall out. I have what I call lingering symptoms. And yet, okay, I'm different because I had thyroid cancer, so they will monitor me and they will check me. But if you're just somebody coming off the street, going to see your doctor, saying you have those lingering symptoms, but they only check TSH and they say you're normal, which is probably what happened to you. What then? What are the options? Where do you go?
Well, that's where you almost have to move into the functional medicine space, because in functional medicine, we take those standard lab value ranges. So we'll take TSH since you mentioned that. Yeah, here in the United States, it goes up to a 4.5. It used to go up to a 6, and then it used to go up to a 10 way back in the day. We've got it knocked down now to a 4.5, but in functional medicine, we want it less than a 2.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't care if it's suppressed, because for some reason, functional medicine practitioners actually understand the physiology of how the thyroid gland works and what happens when you give someone adequate amounts of T4 and T3 instead of T4 only. It's going to shut down the pituitary from sending out the TSH. That's what happens. And when I get questions from patients that are like, well, or not really from patients, if they're a patient, we're doing it all for them. They don't have to worry about getting some BS answer that their TSH is suppressed and they're hyper. But online, on my Facebook group, if I get messages from my audience, I say, how do I talk to my doctor and tell her that she doesn't have to worry about my TSH being low because I feel great? I say, have her go open up a medical textbook and refresh yourself on how the thyroid gland works in the body and the HPT axis, because it's basic physiology that it seems like conventional medicine, especially endocrinologists, totally miss. So functional medicine has their optimal ranges, and how we got these optimal ranges is we said, instead of taking these lab values and numbers from groups of sick people, let's find the fit, badass, healthy people, test them, and then that becomes the optimal range. So I heard Mark Hyman explain this, so I have to give him credit for this analogy, but it's a beautiful analogy. The standard lab value range is like the side of a barn. If I send you back 50 yards, I give you a ball, I say hit the side of a barn, you're probably going to hit it. If I put a bullseye on the barn, which is the functional medicine optimal range, and I send you back, you might hit it, you might not. It's going to get a lot harder to get in that range. But in that range is the sweet spot. That's where we know that you will feel your best. Now, in there, there's personalization, there's nuance. But if you're out here, if you're in that TSH of a 4, you're not going to feel good, or a 3.5 or a 2.5. And then it becomes even more narrow. Like in your case, okay, we want it 2 or below, but for Sandy, she needs it 1.5 or below. And that's her sweet spot. And I have other thyroid cancer, post-thyroidectomy, post-thyroid cancer patients that we have to keep their TSH way suppressed, like 0.005, so that the tissue regrowth doesn't occur. And that's where they
Yes, they did that for me for the first 5 years. And interesting that you say that. Okay, so this is kind of interesting because it's going way back. But when they first removed my thyroid, I was put on T3 only because they were giving me the Thyrogen shot and they wanted me to go hypo, right? So they wanted the drug, the thyroid drug, T3 has a shorter half-life, right?
Right.
So that I wouldn't have to be hypo for as long when they were giving me the shot. But then that was after that, then they're like, okay, now you have to go on the standard of care, which is T4 only. That's when shit hit the fan, to be quite honest. Shit hit the fan. That's when I was on T3 only, right after surgery, it wasn't so bad. Like I was like, okay, not too bad. So interesting, because then it was a whole other whatever situation. It's too long to explain. But I was suppressed for 5 years and virtually undetectable. But I did have at the start some, I guess you could say, some tweakments, maybe. I don't know, energetically, my body, because I did have some heart palpitations, I did have some sleep issues. So, does that make sense to say that maybe if you do remove the gland or ablate the gland, that there may be some adjustments before your body's going to be okay? What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah. I've spoken to many patients that have signed on to work with me or my team, and they're almost pre-planning. They're going, okay, I've been diagnosed with thyroid cancer. I'm scheduled to have a thyroidectomy, and then I want to start working with you. And I always tell them, okay, after that thyroidectomy, it's going to appear that you're fine. You are going to be like, why do I need anybody's help? I feel fantastic. Because as you know, you get a little bit of a thyroid dump when they remove your thyroid. And
Yeah.
for some people, it'll last a week. Some people, it'll last a month, where their thyroid hormones you're almost in a hyper state. Like it's like this, whoa, this rush. And you're like, good. Thank God I got this thing out. I feel great. And then 1 to 4 weeks later, the hypo comes on, and then it's a crash. And then it's, oh my God, I feel so bad. Oh, I'm putting on the weight. I can't even function. I can't even think. I can't open my eyes. I'm so exhausted. My hair is falling out. And it's like a switch flipped, and it's horrible. But that's where we have to catch people in those early stages. Okay, maybe week 1, you don't quite need T3 yet. But as those hormones start to decline and go out of your body, or get utilized, basically, now we have to start adding in the thyroid hormone replacement. And honestly, and you'll resonate with this, one of the things that pisses me off to no end is when a doctor, when they remove the thyroid gland or they use radioactive iodine, no more thyroid gland left. Here's T4.
Yeah.
Now, again, let's break out the textbooks, doctors. The thyroid gland produces what? T4 and, T3.
Yeah.
So, also the thyroid gland is one of the main conversion areas, the main conversion gland for T4 to T3. Now, you'll still get some conversion in the gut, the liver, and the peripheral tissues. We know that. But one of the main glands is the thyroid gland for converting that inactive thyroid hormone to the active thyroid hormone. But we just took it out. And now we're giving T4 only. Does that even make sense? It doesn't even make sense. And it's standard of care.
Yeah.
I mean, it blows my mind what the treatment is for post-thyroidectomy patients, let alone those with a thyroid who just aren't getting optimized, like myself, and given T4 only. But for you guys without a thyroid, my God, I mean, to me, it's borderline malpractice, honestly, because they take an oath to do no harm, and you bet your butt that's going to do harm giving someone T4 only that just had a thyroidectomy.
Oh, Amie. I mean, we'll probably go there more on your podcast, but there's definitely a downstream effect that will affect anyone's life when they have their thyroid removed. And it's so interesting because you speak with some people and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm hypothyroid," or "I had my thyroid removed," or "I had this." And they're like, "Yeah, I'm fine." They don't gain weight. They go on the T4 only and they say they're fine. Like, why? Why is it that, I had to have the complete opposite? And then you hear about some people who are like, yeah, it's perfectly fine, normal.
Okay, but are they fine? So here's my question, right? So here's a good stat for you to hold on to and use if you haven't heard it. I heard this at A4M. 2% do well on T4 only, 98% need T4 and T3. Here's my argument with the 2%, though. I appreciate those stats because it really kind of drives the point home.
Yeah.
That we need that blend. We need T4 and T3 or T3 only. But of that 2%, can I interview them? Because I'll tell you a story. I sat next to a woman on a plane. You start talking, what do you do? What do you do? And I tell her, and she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm on Synthroid. I'm doing just fine." Except that she was about 50 pounds overweight and her hair was super thin. So that's when I pause and I'm like, what is fine? It's the person's perception. And sometimes you're sick for so long that becomes the new norm. You feel like that's how life is. I must just be, getting older. So I'm supposed to not have energy, gain 50 pounds, and lose my hair. But that's not the case. And well, that's why you and I are here talking to people about that. But yeah, what is fine? So
That's a good point.
Because I don't think too many people are fine on T4, especially if they don't have a thyroid.
That's a very good point because a lot of people ignore symptoms or they make excuses for symptoms. Right? Like, a big part of when I went back to college was symptomatology. And if you're not really paying attention and just like what you said, you make excuses. You go, "Oh, I'm getting older. I'm perimenopausal. this is all just normal." So it makes a lot of sense what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, then there's people like us who like, I want to be dancing on that dance floor until I'm like in my grave. Like, I want to be vibrant. I want to feel good. And it's all about that health span and being healthy until I'm not here anymore. That's kind of my plan. So there's some cases that are more complicated. And, I have a lot of conversations mostly with women, and they get really complicated. But what I love is when I hear people educating themselves. So, what about if they're on T4, T3? Their TSH is a little bit suppressed. They're like at a 0.3. Their labs look okay. Their T4 might be a little bit higher. T3 might be free. I'm talking about free. Free T3 might be a little bit lower. And then they got a high reverse T3. So, and reverse T3 is not even checked in Canada, by the way, just so you know.
You guys get screwed.
Yeah, totally. Totally.
How do you end up getting it? Don't you end up like self-ordering? Can you self-order?
When I look at my own labs and I see that my free T4 is high and my free T3 is low, I know what I kind of got to do. I got to address a lot of and then I always self-analyze and I go, okay, what's going on? Okay, I'm a stressed out case right now. We need to figure this out, Sandy. And so that's where I step back and go,
I need to practice what I preach. So I kind of know, but in Canada, we don't check it. So what would somebody do? What would you do with a patient to help them if they still have all of these lingering hypothyroid symptoms? And that's kind of what their labs look like.
So first things first, I want to drop the T4. I won't keep someone on, let's say someone comes in and they're on 88 micrograms of T4 and 5 micrograms of T3, which is this itty bitty dose. It's not enough. So automatically, let's drop the T4 and increase the T3 because that's going to give us our quick win. That's going to drop that reverse. That's going to bring up the free T3. It's going to help the person feel better with symptoms because we know that that's what we have to do based on how that person is converting their T4 to T3. And of course, at the same time, we want to look at what is driving that reverse T3 up. Is it elevated insulin? Is it estrogen dominance? Is it iodine deficiency, nutrient deficiency? But here's the thing, sometimes it can be a genetic predisposition of non-converting. So the D101 and D102 gene. Now, my story is I was put on Armour and T3 in the beginning when I met my mentor. Through the years, it worked at first and then it started not to. And we started changing over. Then we used Synthroid and T3. And then at one point in time, he goes, you know what? I want you to pull the Synthroid and just go T3 only. And I felt amazing. And the reverse T3 wasn't elevated. And by elevated, I mean out of the optimal range. So we want reverse T3 below a 12. So it wasn't elevated. And he said, just pull that. And then what I want you to do is after a few weeks that you're feeling good, I want you to put that T4 back in. I go, okay, I'll do that. Oh, I felt horrible. Went hypo again, gained 5 pounds in a week. And actually, that was the first time that I felt what true depression feels like. I was like, oh, these people that talk about not getting out of bed in the morning, I get it now. Mm-hmm. So I pulled that T4 again, and we tried that twice, adding it in, hold it for a week, pull it back out. How do you feel? And in doing that trial and error, I found that I am a T3 only candidate. It wasn't until last year, actually probably 6 months ago, that I finally did a genetic test that has the D101 and D102 marker. I always suspected it because there were no other causes of a reverse T3, and my reverse T3 wasn't even elevated. But I did well on T3 only. So I got that test done, and sure enough, I have like one copy too. I'm not a geneticist. I don't know. But one of my health coaches is. So she explained it for me. And she's like, oh yeah, you have this SNP and that SNP, and that's why you don't convert. That's what I thought all along. So I know I just went down a rabbit hole, but going back to your question, I always change the dose first and then address what are the underlying causes. Because if you just spend time addressing like, okay, well, let's keep you on this same dose with your elevated reverse T3, and let's work on your insulin resistance, and let's add in the nutrient. And that's great to do. But then the person's going to be 3-4 weeks down the road going, hey, you know what? I still feel like garbage. Can we do something here to make me feel better? So we know that they don't convert well with an elevated reverse T3. Let's change up the dose.
I do have to say the thyroid is such a complex organ. And over the last 13 years, I still, when I speak with different people who are experts, I still learn new things. It's like, oh, wow. So nutrients, that's a really important piece to thyroid health. So are toxins. Mm-hmm. Right? So let's go through some of the important nutrients that are really the basics. What do you need to have in your diet to have a healthy thyroid?
So we know selenium, we know magnesium. Now, on the selenium note, I don't know if you see this with your clients, but so many thyroid patients will read that selenium is good, and then they'll go out and they'll buy something from Walmart, and they'll start taking 200 to 300 milligrams or micrograms of selenium every day, and they'll overdo it. And Even elevated selenium will push up reverse T3. So then that can become a problem on the other side of the spectrum. But magnesium, selenium, and then this is one that we did not talk about prior to the podcast. So I don't know how you feel about it. Iodine. I am a fan of iodine, and I know the functional community, the integrative community is split 50-50 on pro iodine, on iodine. I'm pro iodine. I interviewed Dr. David Brownstein. I've read his books. He is just beyond knowledgeable in the area of iodine. And there's just too much evidence there for me to tell someone to avoid iodine. Now, we start low and slow. When I use iodine, as I do with all my patients, I'm going to start on 25 milligrams. Like, come on, let's start with, I like using a liquid. I like starting off with tiny little drops, because with the liquid, you can titrate. And I always tell my patients, listen, you're going to know if you take too much iodine because you're going to feel hyper that day. And don't worry, it'll wear off. You're not going to go into a thyroid storm unless you dose 50 to 100 milligrams every day on yourself. But if you're starting off with like 5 milligrams, maybe working your way up to 10, 12.5, just slowly titrating up that iodine dose. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. It helps lower reverse T3. It helps the thyroid gland produce T4 and T3. And then back to your toxin comment, we know that the three halides that are toxic to the thyroid: fluoride, stop using the fluoride toothpaste, chlorine, which is in our water supply for sure. So if you can't afford a whole house water filtration system, for goodness sake, get something for your shower.
Yes.
To filter that out. And then bromide, which is so hard to avoid. I got a couch over there with some pillows. I got a rug right there. I'm wearing clothes. I'm sitting on a cloth chair. If you live by a golf course, if you eat bread, you're exposed to bromide. It's a fire retardant that is actually put in our food supply. Yeah. So bromide is incredibly toxic to the thyroid as well. Now, what will happen if we're exposed to these toxic halides, which we all are, the receptor site on the cell for iodine can also accept those three toxic halides. So if you don't have enough iodine in your system to attach to that receptor site, what's going to attach to the receptor site? A toxin. So when we have enough iodine in our bodies, that kicks out the toxic halides out of that cell receptor, and the iodine takes its place instead. So iodine is also used as a detox, and rightly so, because it's literally protecting our thyroid against those toxic halides.
Yeah, I definitely align more with you. I've heard opposite to this. I've heard that, we know that one thing we do know is that too much iodine can exacerbate thyroid issues. But exactly. I remember so long ago, Amie, I was working with a practitioner and we did an iodine loading protocol. And this was before I went back to college. I'm like, because what happened, I had thyroid cancer and I also had a breast tumor at the same time. So I did the biopsy, the core biopsy, and that was 1 month before I had my thyroid removed. So some might say, oh, completely unrelatable. I personally know myself, I know my own body, that it was definitely relatable. And, I had a practitioner who I was working with at that time, and she would say to paint the Lugol's on the sore fibrocystic side, because it was a fibroadenoma. It was not cancerous.
Yeah.
And anyway, so I think iodine is definitely a crucial nutrient, not just for the thyroid. I mean, I don't have the gland anymore, but I still make sure I get enough iodine. It's good for the brain, good for your breasts. I think I would definitely align with you on that. That, how much of the standard American diet has, unless you're taking in a ton of iodized salt, which actually everybody's now sea salt. And isn't sea salt lower?
It is, but even the iodized salt isn't the right kind. So it's not like you're missing out by using like Redmond's real salt or sea salt or anything like that. You really do need to supplement with iodine. When the government started putting iodine salt out to help with goiter, it did help a little bit. But what we're finding in actually studying the what the body needs for iodine, needs potassium, iodine. And to your point about the breast, oh my gosh, fibrocystic breast disease responds so well to iodine, as do fibroids, uterine fibroids, hair, all the symptoms of hypothyroidism can be helped. I mean, maybe not eliminated. I don't want to go so far as to say just take iodine and you don't need your thyroid medication. No. But they can definitely help. Like I'll start patients on iodine as we're starting them on that optimization journey in the beginning. And I mean, it's not linear. People will get better and then like, oh, there's my hypo symptoms again. So giving them that little bit of iodine, sometimes we'll hear within days like, oh my gosh, I feel like myself again. My brain's lighting up and I have more energy. So just from that alone. So it definitely helps. But to your point, you have to be careful of the dose. So yeah, what happened to you when you did the loading?
I forget, I think I got up to like 50 drops.
Okay.
Something, and it was the Lugol's.
Yep.
And then
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was high. And then I don't recall feeling anything major either way. I don't recall feeling anything major either way. And then we kind of went down to just a standardized 10 drops every day. And now at this point in my life, I'm 54 and right in the very, very late stages of perimenopause.
Okay.
I still take iodine, even though I don't have the gland. I still take it a few times a week in a little bit of water, a couple drops, just to ensure that I don't become deficient. Because I often wonder, like people don't realize how poorly sourced our food is. And even though I'm very cognizant of that and careful, I think when people say, oh, well, I eat healthy, I don't need supplements. I'm like, you probably do.
Yeah.
You might be able to get by until you're about 40, 35, 40, and then you're going to see symptoms of something. And now we're seeing younger and younger women and men with issues, right? Like it's getting worse.
It's getting worse. It really is. And is it the toxin? I mean, I think it's a combination. It's the increased amount of toxins that we're exposed to, the increased chemicals that we're using. I shared before we jumped on here that now I'm living in Iowa. Now I live in kind of a wooded zone of Iowa, but you drive anywhere and you see fields and fields and fields of gold, like corn crops and soybean crops and all of that. And what they spray on those crops is horrendous. I mean, yeah, you have the glyphosate, but then you have a boatload of other chemicals. And I hear the farmers around here talking about their Roundup Ready seed, like GMO, Monsanto, all day long. Like that's what you're eating. That's what you're putting in your body. And then we have all the xenoestrogens that women, teens are being exposed to. And then we wonder, why are girls getting their period at the age of 9? Well, yeah, we're actually speeding up their aging process. We're kicking them into puberty early, and that's going to equal a boatload of other diseases down the road because the body wasn't supposed to go into puberty at the age of 9.
Yeah.
It's the hormones that we're being exposed to in our environment that is causing that. So yeah, I agree with you. We're already seeing it now. Way more autoimmune, way more thyroid problems, way more hormonal issues than ever before. And I think it's only going to get worse.
Yeah. And allergies, right? Then there's like the allergies are insane. Like I remember growing up, I'm like, I never heard of anybody being allergic to peanuts. Like what? And my daughter's anaphylactic to peanuts. So, she also had eczema at birth. So all of these things are like telltale signs of these issues.
Yeah.
So thyroid is especially vulnerable to these toxins. So people will say, well, how do I get away from it? We kind of touched on, I'm always like good, better, best options for food. You do what you can with, the budgets that you have, but it's like, vote with your dollar, you'll get better food, that kind of thing. But how do you rid your body? Like you said that you're living, I know you're a biohacker, but what do you do to ensure that you're not absorbing all of those toxins all the time?
You do your best. I'm very, very public and open about not being perfect because I think that's important for our audience to know. And I respect the people like Brian Johnson who have trillions of dollars spent on biohacking equipment, but most people don't. And most people can't live their life minute to minute thinking about what the next biohacking tool is going to be
True.
that they need to implement. So, will I use iodine? Yes. I have a sauna. Yes. Finally got one this year. So, I use that for detox as well. Do hot yoga in there, just sit in the sauna. Exercise, obviously, daily just for circulation and all that. And I do my best. Yes. I buy organic fruits and vegetables. We buy a cow from a farmer that says that he doesn't use hormones and whatnot, so I have to take him at his word, whatever. You do your best.
Yeah.
But am I 100% perfect? No, no, I'm not. There's certain shampoos that I like that have parabens, but they really do well on my hair. There's a concealer from MAC that I like.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to go crazy trying to protect myself at 100%. If I can hit 80%, that's a win.
Oh, you and I are so aligned in that because it's always about the 80-20 rule. And so I actually look at my nails. So I took off my gel nails.
You did.
I did it after 6 years of no break. I never had a break. I wasn't one of those people I didn't do the tips, but I did the gel overlay, on my own nails. Anyway, I took it off because I looked at my thermography report. I know it freaked me out, Amie, because I was like, oh my God, my nail beds are red. And then they reported unusual, what did they say? Thermogenic activity on my nail beds. I'm like, okay, I got to go take these off. This is my sign. But I was having wrist problems, hand problems. So it all connected to symptoms, which is why I'm always like, everybody's so bio individually different, and how it affects you would affect different people differently. You get my point. So
Yep.
I think we should move on to estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a big topic. And the one thing a lot of people who are listening, they're perimenopausal or menopausal, and they see their thyroid, if they've already had thyroid issues going up and down and all around, or they develop new thyroid issues right around menopause. So how is the thyroid connected to estrogen?
So it has a this way and that way connection, meaning, as we said earlier with reverse T3, you don't want to be in an estrogen dominant state because that could push up reverse T3 and can really have an effect on your body's own production of thyroid hormone. You also don't really want to be in a low estrogen state because now you have symptoms overlapping. This is why I have the whole concept of when I treat patients, I say we do both and. Meaning you're not going to come to me and we're just going to do thyroid. We're going to do hormones too. Because if we don't look at hormones, if we don't look at insulin, if we don't look at ferritin, if we don't look at your nutrients, if we don't look at everything, what's the point in just focusing here? All that's going to happen is you're going to tell me, okay, yeah, I feel a little bit better, but I still have this symptom and that symptom. I'm still bloated. I'm still gaining weight. My hair's still falling out. Well, again, let's look at hormones. And specifically when we look at estrogen, having an optimal estradiol number is vital for longevity. So really, when we look at thyroid, it's kind of more about the here and now, we'll say. It's I want a metabolism. I want to feel good. I want my brain to work. I want to be able to go to the bathroom. Like, that's the here and the now. Estrogen has a little bit here and now, definitely helps your brain, helps with vaginal dryness, vaginal atrophy, helps with water retention. It definitely helps your hair. But when we look long term, having an optimal estradiol level specifically is going to reduce your risk of Alzheimer's by 67%. It's going to protect your bones against osteoporosis and osteopenia. It's going to be cardiovascularly protective. It's going to help your skin not wrinkle and not age quickly, because estrogen provides a baseline for collagen and elastin production. It does so much in the long term. That's your bone, brain, breast, and heart protection with estradiol. Now, the other hormones come in and help with that too. If we looked at the benefits of progesterone, the benefits of testosterone, they're going to cross over with estradiol as well. And all those are going to cross over with thyroid.
Yeah.
So we have to do everything at the same time. There are huge, huge benefits to optimizing the thyroid, tremendous benefits to optimizing thyroid and hormones together.
Yeah, it's so funny because until my estrogen really started to drop, I was coasting along, Amie. I was feeling pretty good. I was like, this is good. And then when estrogen dropped, it was just a kind of a shit show of symptoms. And that included rapid weight gain. It included my HbA1c went up to 6.1 in a matter of, I think it was 6 months. So I think it was, I just looked at this, February of 2022, my HbA1c was 5.5. October 2022, I started to get some hot flashes. I'm like, oh, is this menopause? And then at the same time, my HbA1c was 6.1. So it's like and then, the rapid weight gain, it was like everything, it was like a storm. And I'm like, is it thyroid? Is it menopause? What is it? And, the symptoms, like you said, can absolutely cross over, especially if you have thyroid disease, or if you're chronically hypothyroid, like you would be if you don't have a thyroid gland.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that you said you start testing everything, because all the hormones are the symphony. They got to work together. So, okay, what would you do with a patient like that who all of a sudden started to get menopausal symptoms, like estrogen completely crashes? Like, what do you do? Where do you even begin?
Let's bring in the bioidentical hormones.
Yeah.
They're a beautiful thing. Let's replace those hormones that are no longer being properly made. Because here's the thing, we now know enough evidence is out, even in the fake news world, right? Not just the functional world, but in the actual Wall Street Journal world, that hey, it turns out that study that was done, that Women's Health Initiative study that scared the bejesus out of every doctor and woman, and everybody got their hormones ripped out of their hands. Yeah, we were wrong.
Yeah.
And now the authors of the study are coming out, tail between their legs, going, yeah, so, we probably didn't do that really well. So, you can use your hormones again, ladies. We now know that hormones are safe. We've known that forever. The general population needed to hear that from the authors of the WHI that ruined hormones for everyone so many years ago. So now we know that hormones are safe. And we also, when we look at the animal population, we know that animals will basically start their decline when they can't reproduce anymore. I mean, that's when disease state starts coming on.
Yeah.
And it's no different for us. Hormones give us life and hormones protect us. Just like I said about estradiol, 67% reduction in Alzheimer's. So now we can use bioidentical, meaning identical to what your body made when you were 20 years old. We can use hormones that are damn near identical to that to support your body and allow you to age truly gracefully and have you be an amazing badass into your 70s, 80s, 90s, and you're feeling fantastic. So why not use them? We have them. Why not use them?
Yeah, I often wonder because I ended up having that was a whole other I guess detour because I went and became a certified metabolic balance coach, lost 4% total body fat, had to make changes not to technically really what I ate, but it was more how I ate. And you're going to find this really interesting because we were talking about biohacking. All of this happened while I was intermittent fasting. So this is the thing. This is right. But this is what I mean. Like, so I call it the maniverse, Amie, because woman to woman, we know that a lot of the things that these big names in podcasting and the biohacking world and the wellness world, these men that they talk about, they're not based on women.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I agree. I love Mindy Peltz with her, fast like a girl, her whole concept of fasting. But outside of her, honestly, I tell women, like, please don't listen to other influencers tell you to fast because you're going to tank your hormones. And I was just at an event with Ben Greenfield. I've been on his show, but we were talking about that intermittent fasting thing. And he even came out and said, yeah, this whole intermittent fasting thing, it's ended up being tanking people's thyroid and tanking their metabolism. And I really don't like women to go over, 12, maybe 14 hours in a day.
yeah.
Like, you're the first dude that has come out and said that. Like, thank God somebody is saying that to these women.
Yeah, I had a feeling you would align with that. So tanking the thyroid, I don't know if there's enough research on this, but here's just a thought because I was actually just posting about this recently about how everyone and their mother's going on Ozempic.
Oh God. Yep.
Okay. So I wonder, because I'm like, listen, it's like we live in this world of easy. Let's take the easy way out. And I'm not saying there's not a place for it. There absolutely is a place for it. But you're seeing a lot of these celebrities who might be like 5 pounds heavier than they should be or they feel comfortable at. They go on Wegovy or whatever, Ozempic, whatever the brand name is. And then they get so skinny, they're not eating. So, what does that do to the thyroid when they get off of those drugs?
Yeah. So I think, the more we have these drugs in play, and I call them the Beverly Hills soccer mom drug of choice for weight loss, because so many women are abusing it totally. And here's the thing. Here's the side note: is they are amazing medications for those who are obese, who have type 2 diabetes, who have maybe even, some of my patients have 50 to 100 pounds to lose, and it's going really slow, or they hit a plateau, and just when we balance out 50 to 100 extra pounds on the body and the detriment that can do versus the side effects of the weight loss drugs, we'll take the weight loss drugs and we'll go low and slow so we can get that weight off and make them healthier. People who have 10 to 15 pounds to lose that are using this.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing more and more come out. So now we know it does burn muscle. It burns the fat off of your face. There's such thing as Mounjaro face.
Yeah.
And I played around with it. When it first came out, I experimented because I like experimenting on myself so I can bring it back to my people.
Yeah.
And I had to get fat put back into my face because I look like Skeletor. I lost all the fat like right here below my cheeks and I became sunken in.
Oh.
Now I do see women that I caught this long before I started losing muscle, but I started seeing the signs. It was right after Peter Attia came out. It was like, you know what? There's lean muscle mass with this stuff. I'm like, no. And then I'm like, oh, there's my mother's arms because I'm losing muscle and I'm seeing like my skin gather.
Yeah.
And now I see some women that are on these and I know exactly what you're talking about. They look horrible.
Yeah.
They have no legs, they have no ass, they have
Yeah.
no body whatsoever because they lost all their muscle, and they look at least 15 years older than they are. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, congratulations, you're lower body fat, but you look like you're 80.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder what it does to the thyroid, because we know that extreme diets will slow the thyroid down.
Question. Sorry,
Yeah.
I went on.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Like I'm sure it would, right? Like it would slow the function of the thyroid. So not only would it do all those things that you were saying, but logically it would probably slow thyroid function down, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Any kind of starvation mode, any kind of caloric restriction, whether it's through just sheer will or it's through a drug that kills your appetite, any kind of caloric restriction is going to shut down the thyroid. So even if we use these GLPs with patients, I have them make me a deal on two fronts. Number one, you're going to eat protein like it's your job. And I don't care if you're not hungry, you can sip a protein shake. So blend that protein shake up with 2 scoops of a high quality bone broth based protein and make it 40 grams per shake. And if you have to drink 3 shakes in a day because you can't possibly eat anything else, then you do it. And you at least get your protein in. And eat a beef stick and eat some Greek yogurt in between. I don't care. Get your protein in.
Yeah.
Number 2, you have to lift heavy because you have to keep on that muscle. And by, keeping the calories up and the protein up and then still lifting heavy to activate the muscle, that it helps. But if people don't do that and they go into the starvation, it's going to take your thyroid.
Yeah. And then what do you think of amino acids? Because that's something that I have really in the last couple years gone on where, oh my God, Amie, you'd probably think I'm insane, but I used to work out fasted.
Yep.
Then I'm like, I don't see the benefit. And then I completely changed in terms of how I work out, and I take amino acids before I work out, sometimes after as well. Essential amino acids, not branch chain, essential. And then creatine while I'm working out, I'm drinking. Like, does that make sense to you to keep that muscle? Okay, good.
I love amino acids and creatine. And, with creatine, we're finding more and more benefits for menopausal women, like brain health and cardiovascular protection and bone protection. I mean, all of these creatine benefits are starting to come out now. When really, creatine's been around for 25, 30, 40 years. I mean, I remember it again back in my bodybuilding days. That's when, it was kind of in play. It was a bodybuilding supplement. You took it because it pushes nutrients and water into the cell, makes you stronger, makes your muscles pump. But now we're finding all these other benefits of creatine too. And amino acids, hands down.
Yeah.
No brainer. Absolutely.
Okay, we have to get into a little bit. You did touch up on T3 only, like how that sometimes really, really helps patients.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to talk about T2.
Mm-hmm.
And I had done a bit of research on it. This was a couple years ago. So initially T4. Then I went T4. I went to my doctor and I said, can you please give me a little bit of T3? I think I'm a poor converter. So here I was telling him that. He said, okay. And that's where that all began. Then 2 years ago, I started a little bit of desiccated because I researched that desiccated has T1, T2, T3, T4, calcitonin. And I'm like, okay, it kind of gives you that whole nice little symphony of thyroid hormones. But apparently there's not a lot in desiccated, right? But maybe talk a little bit about T2 because a lot of people don't talk about it. And I heard one doctor's point of view, he was very against it.
Oh, okay. You have to tell me who that is. I'll have to look him up because I haven't heard any against arguments yet.
He believes you should try and get your body to do it on its own through nutrients.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I mean, Okay, yes and no. So to your point, it is in natural desiccated thyroid because the thyroid gland makes T1, 2, 3, and 4. We just don't talk about it a lot.
Right.
So when we're looking at, we'll say a 60 milligram dose of Armour or natural desiccated thyroid, NP or Armour, in there, there's roughly 6 to 9 micrograms of T2. So of that, and I might even be shooting high, that might be in a 120 dose. It might be even lower for a 60. But when we're looking at the studies on T2, I mean, 30 years of research has been done on this bad boy. And really, I only started looking at it about 15 years ago because it was in a bro science supplement. And I was using it with my patients that were stuck on T4 only. And this is before I gather prescribers in every state. So now we can prescribe to every state, but back in the day, we couldn't. And I would have patients come in on T4 only, and they're gaining the weight. They can't lose the weight no matter what they do nutritionally, exercise wise, nothing. So I would give them this bro science supplement that had this angry freaking name. And I'm like, just trust me, just take this. And then they come back, they're like, oh my gosh, my energy's finally up. I have this nice steady energy through the day. It's not like a jacked up, jittery energy. And I'm finally losing the weight. I'm like, this is interesting. So you start looking at the literature, and we find that T2 activates brown adipose tissue. So that's it's kind of like jumping in a cold plunge. That's why we do it, right? To create autophagy and to stimulate that brown adipose tissue, which then improves insulin resistance. It makes us more thermogenic. It increases our basal metabolic rate. So T2 will actually increase your RMR without doing anything else. Now, of course, if you add on exercise on top of that, hey, bonus. It activates ATP production at the mitochondria level. And really the most important thing with T2 is that it can be taken by anyone, thyroid problem or not. So those who are stuck on T4 only, my God, yeah, take it because it's going to give you something. And T2 can become T3 by attaching an iodine atom to it. So it can become T3. It's not going to readily become T3. So you're not going to take T2 and take your free T3 level from a 2.5 to a 3.5. Like that's not going to happen. But you might get a little bit of a boost, a little bit more of T3 in your body from the T2. But it doesn't matter because it's not working on the thyroid gland itself. So it doesn't have that negative feedback loop of shutting down your own thyroid production when you take it. So that's why average people who don't have a thyroid problem can take it if they just need to lose weight or feel better and have more energy. And thyroid patients can take it too if they need to lose weight because they're not quite optimized and they want to have more energy. So it works in both populations. And I'll say one other thing about it, back to the burning fat versus burning muscle. Here's the thing with T3. It's beautiful. I love it. I'm T3 only, like I shared. But it doesn't differentiate burning fat versus muscle. It's going to burn both. Now, I mean, again, eat enough protein, lift heavy enough. I don't notice that I'm losing muscle or anything like that. But when you look at bodybuilders, they were the OGs of biohacking because I'm going to tell you, we were trying everything on ourselves long before it came into the biohacking world, like peptides, SARMs, growth hormone, GHRP, all of it we were doing first. So when it comes to losing body fat, bodybuilders would take T3. They would abuse it, whether they had a thyroid problem or not. And I was watching an interview with one of these pro trainers. And he goes, I don't let my athletes use T3 because they're going to lose muscle. And then they're going to come out the other side of this show with a thyroid problem because of the negative feedback loop. And now they're going to need thyroid medication because I use T2 because it only burns body fat, leaves their muscle alone, and it doesn't create a thyroid problem. I was like, yay, good job, dude. Thank you for putting that out there because I've been using it with my ladies too. And it's been a miracle. So finally, 15 years later, I formulated it myself and put it in a non-angry bro science product. So now it's in my Thyroid Fixer and my Metabolism Fixer. But the big question I get from people is, can I take it if I don't have a thyroid? I'm like, yeah, absolutely you can. That's the beauty of it.
Oh, so I, I I'm careful about what may potentially affect my medications.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
I did do some research that it shouldn't affect my
No,
medications.
no, it should not. No, because it does not have a thyromimetic effect. It also doesn't have a cardiovascular effect. So, when you start taking T3, there are some people that are really sensitive to it.
Yep.
I mean, you give them 2.5 or 5 micrograms and they're like, oh, my heart is pounding, it's racing. T2 doesn't have the cardiovascular effect. So that's another way to, sometimes if I do have somebody that's really sensitive to T3, let's ease into it. Let's use T2 for a while. Let's get some quick wins, a little bit more energy, some weight loss. And then, let's check your adrenals, check your ferritin, let's check your gut, let's check all those things that are making you really sensitive to T3. And we'll try to add T3 in down the road. But this is a beautiful adjunct therapy for those who can't tolerate T3 as well.
Okay, I'm going to have to talk to you more about this offline because I'm like, because I've had so many extremes with how I feel. You get jaded, right? Like you're like, oh God, like, do I want to go? I've even gone through a compounded stage where I was doing a customized compounding and they were using a pine extract for time release. And I'm allergic to pine. And I ended up going really, really hypo. Anyway, I've had my share, Amie, of symptoms, but this to me sounds extremely intriguing because it's almost like when you're doing everything else and you go, what haven't I done? That's the one thing I haven't done right there, the T2.
Yep.
So that might be somewhere I need to go. So
now I have a random crazy idea, and you can edit this out if you don't want to do it. But what if we kept going and made this a joint podcast with 2 parts?
ooh,
Because our conversation so far has been so fluid and like a conversation, and I love it, that I could publish that as a podcast, part 1. And now I'm going to take over and ask you questions and kind of flow into
let's
that.
do it.
Totally up to you.
Okay, let's do it. I love this idea.
Okay, so you just said that you've been on a roller coaster, right? So can you get into, and I know your listeners have heard this, but I want my listeners to hear this too. What is your story with cancer? And I've not dove into thyroid cancer on the show yet, 400 and some episodes, you would think, right? But what is your story? And then let's talk about, like, what medication are you on?
Yeah.
What are those highs and lows? What are your roller coasters that you're dealing with? So let's discuss.
Okay. So I can definitely now go back and say thyroid issues for me began postpartum after my second child. So I can, I was never diagnosed with anything. And I don't think I have to be because now in hindsight, I can look back and go, okay, all of a sudden I didn't have any breast milk. I wasn't sleeping. I was a stressed out mess. I was a complete and utter mess. I had, a lot of postpartum trauma. And I had a toddler as well, a husband who was traveling. So take all this into account. I got really, really, really skinny. I had a baby that had colic, didn't sleep for 8 months. So I can, and the breast milk, that was so weird for me, Amie, because with my first child, I had too much breast milk. I ended up getting mastitis twice. I had plenty of breast milk. It took me 2 years to lose all the weight because I had gained 60 pounds, but I was borderline toxemic with my first. So I think it started after my second child with undiagnosed issues with my thyroid. And I could pretty clearly say postpartum thyroiditis that developed into thyroid disease. So I would have been 35 when I had her, and I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer at 41. And it was an incidental finding. So one day, I have to go 1 year before I was diagnosed. My daughter was diagnosed with cancer. She was 5 at the time. So compounding stress.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I can say this is why I'm always like, why do they have all of these, baby visits, but nobody really check? Maybe things have changed because this was going back in 2005. She was born. Not enough care for the moms. Not enough. Are you okay? Let's check all your blood work. Let's check your numbers. Let's see what's going on with you. So I can pretty clearly say that's where it began. And then when my daughter was diagnosed with cancer, the stress there, and then I had a migraine with aura about 1 year after she was diagnosed. And it was the first time I had ever had a migraine with aura. I thought I was having a stroke. I'm like, what's going on? I saw my doctor. It was a substitute doctor, thank goodness, because she was the one who ran investigative tests. And she's like, this is weird. Not many women get migraines with aura starting at 41. So let's do some tests. They did a carotid artery ultrasound and found that I had 5 nodules. Nobody had ever checked my thyroid. Nobody had ever palpitated to see if there were lumps there. Then they sent me for the fine needle biopsy, and one of the nodules was cancerous. And they said, let's take the whole thing out because 80% of our patients come back to have the other half taken out. So that's where it all began.
Okay. That's craziness. Okay. So then you have it removed. And just like we were talking about earlier, that thyroid dump that occurs. So how did you feel after they took it out?
It's so funny because right after they took it out, I was like, not so bad. Like I felt like, okay, they took out the whole gland and then a couple of lymph nodes just to ensure that it hadn't spread, nothing spread anywhere. And I felt okay. And then in January, and I was on T3 during that time. So it was a little bit longer. It was a few months. And I'm like, I'm not doing bad. I'm kind of in my flow. When they took me off the T3, and they made me go severely hypothyroid to get the thyrogen injection to make sure I had no thyroglobulin.
Mm-hmm.
My TSH climbed to 32. And I honestly, Amie, that was when I was like, oh my God, like I felt like I was dying. My face, I actually have pictures. My face, I didn't even look like the same person. I had such severe edema. They say moon face. It was awful. I couldn't get off the couch, and it was not fun. No.
No, I know. I have pictures somewhere of my moon phase. I've tried to dig them up, but I might have thrown them away because I was just pissed off when I ran across them. Like, ew, I don't even look like myself. But I wish I would have kept them because that's real. And
real.
I mean, I'm sure you've seen it too, the before and afters of people where you have your own. You have your own experience. We have our own experience. But really looking at someone else when they have that before and after, you really go, oh my gosh, the face changed so much. And it's not about losing weight in the face. It's literally about that edema, like you said.
Oh, and even the hands, and that's like a big thing that a lot of people maybe don't talk about, but like I still sometimes will get that, but the swelling in the hands, I couldn't put on any rings. I was like, I don't, it was an awful feeling. And then I had the injection. Then they're like, okay, now you go on T4. And that's where a whole other slew of problems began, where everything slowed down. And it's that whole conversion thing that we were talking about, where I literally had infections that wouldn't heal. And I don't know. I'm writing about it in my book because I am writing a second book. It's almost like this I don't know, Amie, it's like a shame. Like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And then I was sent to a gastroenterologist. I was put on a proton pump inhibitor. I was told I have too much acid in my stomach, and it was a high dose. And then they told me I had Barrett's esophagus. So it was like, it was this snowball effect again of health issues where I'm like, what's going on? Like, I was okay on T3 only, but this all happened while I was on T4 only.
Yeah. Yeah. So then what? I mean, this is like a suspense story. So you're on T4 only. You're going hypo again. Here's all the symptoms.
Yeah.
What's next?
So then they started doing scopes. I had multiple scopes. I started seeing a naturopath doctor. I started to do IV because I'm like, okay, I got to go a different route because I was exhausted. My hair was falling out. I mean, these are all things that I know that you would have heard many times over. But it was the whole gut component that really threw me for a loop because when I started seeing a naturopathic doctor and I said, he's like, you can't be on these proton pump inhibitors for a long time because it's going to hurt you in the long run. So he tried to wean me off. I did everything. I went gluten-free for 2 years. I quit coffee for 6 months. We thought that the component was diet related. I completely overhauled my diet. This is all before I went back to college. And we went off the proton pump inhibitor for a year. I went back to have a scope and she said, well, now you have Barrett's esophagus. So now, not only did you have thyroid cancer, you're at risk for esophageal cancer. So I went back on the proton pump inhibitor. That was when I started reading Stop the Thyroid Madness. Maybe you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Classic.
And I started researching. That's when I went back to my endocrinologist, said, you need to give me some T3. Like, I read about this. I'm a poor converter. This is what's wrong with me. This will help the infections. Because the fact is, and I've never spoken about this publicly, I had been bleeding for over a year. Yeah, but it was fissures. And it just started happening where and it was scary. I'm like, in all honesty, like, do you swear on your podcast?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was like, what the fuck? Is this my destiny? Am I going to die of anal cancer like Farrah Fawcett? Is this what everyone's going to remember me for? Like, this is what I thought was happening, Amie. And so it was, and as much as Western medicine does good in their part, I felt like I was harmed. I felt like this was really doing me harm because why on earth would they think that just because I have infections and bleeding and I was slow to healing, that this was because I had too much stomach acid? Like, are you kidding me? It set me on this pace of I just needed to learn more. That's when I started seeing the naturopath doctors. That's when I tried to wean, but I'll get to the whole PPI part. And I did all this stuff and repaired a lot of inflammation. I started doing IV therapies regularly just to help with adrenal function. So, the Myers cocktail and, high doses of vitamin C and it was so good for me because I started to feel better. The T3, all of that. And then I was like, well, maybe I could go natural instead of synthetic. That was when I did my little trick with, let's try compounded. And then that was a big fail.
Right.
And I slowly weaned off the proton pump inhibitor, not off, down.
Mm-hmm.
And believe it or not, 12 years later, I'm still on it.
Okay. just a low dose.
Very low. So what I was initially on like 60 milligrams, like it was 1.5 of, it was called Tecta. I can't remember which one it was. And it was very high. And then when I had my follow-up scope, she's like, "Oh, looks like the inflammation has really gone down now." So I'm like, "But I thought you said I had Barrett's esophagus." So I was very confused because I didn't think that that was reversible.
Right. I mean, we hear that it's not. So have you tried using like betaine hydrochloric acid?
I take it every day.
All that, all
Yeah.
the things,
Yeah.
right?
So I've done all that. I've tried bitters because then, to continue with the story, I went back to college when I was 46. So now I'm 54. So I went back to the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition, got my diploma in holistic nutrition. And I'm like, I got to help other people now.
Right.
But the whole thing with the PPI, it's actually, I'm still looking for a geneticist, somebody who's, because I carry some weird genes, thyroid genes. I also carry a gene for CF, cystic fibrosis. And I know that GERD and chronic heartburn. By the way, I didn't have heartburn until I tried to wean off the PPI. That's the crazy thing. So I wasn't put on the PPI for heartburn. I was put on it because I had fissures and I was bleeding. And they said, and by the way, it never helped. It was when I went on the T3 that things started to heal and things started to actually repair in my body.
Interesting. Okay.
So I have done everything in relation to diet, nutrition. Still to this day, I take betaine hydrochloric acid, pretty high dose, like 1,500 milligrams with every protein meal. I also take a digestive enzyme. And I think that's the only way I didn't become anemic in my 40s because I was also estrogen dominant. I had the high, I had a lot of blood clots and heavy periods. I had all of that, Amie.
Right.
So I think I hacked my own digestion.
That's beautiful. Well, I'll connect you with my health coach that's an epigenetic human performance coach, by far the best with genetics that I've ever run into, ever.
Yeah.
So we'll figure out what's going on with you there. We'll figure that out.
It's been 12 years, Amie. It would be nice to find a solution to finally, I'm on the smallest dose now. I'm on, 20 milligrams of over-the-counter Nexium now.
Okay.
So
which dose of thyroid then? What are you on right now?
So I am on 2 different doses of Synthroid. I think is it 125 and 112? 5 days a week, I take the higher dose. Weekends, I take the lower dose. I take 15 milligrams, or is it micrograms of
3
of desiccated.
Oh, so that'd be milligrams of the desiccated. Yep.
And then I take 2.5 micrograms of Cytomel twice a day. And it's so funny talking to my endocrinologist. He's like, I do not have any patients. I have one other patient, only one, that he gives T3 to, but no other patient that's on such a complex mix. But it's like, it's my mix. It makes me feel good. And I'm good with managing. Obviously, I take handfuls of supplements. I can manage my medications, no problem. So it's a good mix. Yeah. It's custom, very custom.
It's very custom, but that is the thyroid. Like we talked about earlier, it's nuanced, it's personalized. You have to figure out what is going to work for your body. And then I'm sure all the things that you're doing too. So what is go into your kind of personal repertoire with supplements? Now you don't have to go through all of them because I know we have boatloads of supplements in our house, you and I. Yeah. So what are your main supplements that you like to focus on? And what do you do for your body, like biohacking, nutrition? Let's kind of break that down.
So I found that, like I was explaining in the first part, in 2022,
I don't like labels, but if somebody wanted to label me, they could say I was insulin resistant. And it was for a very short time. As soon as I saw it, I caught it. So I eat 3 meals a day, 5 hours apart, Amie. I do not snack. And the only time that I find my weight creeps back up again is if I develop a new habit. So last year, I started having a no sugar matcha every day. And I gained 4 pounds just like that because it was like another freaking meal. And then I'm like, holy shit, this is why I'm gaining weight. Then I stopped that. That kind of put me off track. Otherwise, I've been able to maintain. I do take a glucose stabilizer. So I've been using it's out of Sweden. It's called Sigrid, and it's a silica nanoparticle. Yeah, and they've actually done white papers on it in comparison to metformin. Highly effective. So I do that, and then my estrogen can kind of play games with me right now in the sense that my estrogen completely tanked recently, and I put on 4 pounds just like that again. And so I'm like, okay, here we go again. It's like, with hormones, it's just like what you were saying in the first part. It's always about the mix of all of it together. So even though my thyroid might have been functioning okay, what was going on with my other stuff? So I do not ever snack anymore. And that's how I manage my weight. And I eat 3 meals. I start with protein. I know there's other glucose experts that say start with your veg. Nope. No, it's protein. Protein is just such a good, and it's such a good foundation. It's like a buffer for when I eat. So I'll even I'll have dessert, I'll have whatever, but I will not have it 2 hours later because that's me calling on insulin once again to say, hey, come lower my glucose. And then I run into problems. So I found that this is extremely helpful, and maybe it's helpful for other thyroid patients who have trouble with weight loss. Like, we were saying, listening to all these people who say fast and fast. I'm like, no, technically I'll do an overnight fast of 12 hours, but I don't do more than that.
Right.
And then supplements, oh my God, I take a lot.
All right, wait, we'll stay on the nutrition because the more we talk, the more I'm saying the same thing in my head. Like, oh my God, we're so aligned. Like we're so aligned in so many things. So on the nutrition piece, and I love that you're doing the 3 meals a day. I love that you do protein first. Yes, I'm in total agreement with that. How much protein are you taking in? And because you were insulin resistant, what are you doing with your carbohydrates? And what do you like to do with your clients that you see, like, listen, you're insulin resistant? And of course, we don't know if it's the thyroid causing the insulin resistance. Like in your case, you were eating great, but here's the insulin resistance popping up. Oh, here it is. Is it the thyroid that's off and it just is dysregulating someone's insulin left and right? Or is it that they're legitimately eating too many processed carbohydrates and sugars? So what do you do with yourself and then with your clients in that realm?
Well, for me, I definitely have a threshold for carbohydrates, meaning if the majority of my meal is going to be carbohydrates, I'm going to run into problems. I don't really count. There were times that I was, keto. I was keto because I've done every diet under the sun since I had my thyroid out. And keto was one of them. And I think it put me in a really bad headspace with counting, macros.
Right.
And so I will try to have 25 grams of protein with each meal. Mm-hmm. And then if I am having a workout day. So I'm very cognizant of what's going on with my stress levels and how much I work out. I had been working out with a personal trainer for 6 years. I actually just stopped recently and just joined my gym. It's just too expensive, too much money. And I'm like, I know how to do this stuff. Why am I doing this? So it's always been twice a week for the last 6 years of mostly strength training. And on those days, I take in more. I take in more protein. I take in my amino acids. I take in all of that. In terms of carbohydrates, like right now, because I had put on 4 pounds just like that over a month, and then I found out that it was estrogen related, my estrogen just tanked. I am now more cognizant than I normally would be, meaning my carbohydrates would be a dark 100% sourdough rye bread. And I'll have like a tiny little slice with each meal, almost like just to ensure I get some nutrients that are going to keep me full.
Yeah.
I change how I eat depending on what's going on. And right now I'm actually just kind of starting to come back from a not great phase of plummeting estrogen. It's not fun.
Now, are you on bioidentical hormone replacement, or you're on estrogen? Okay.
I am. So, but it's, and this is the other thing. I don't know. Do you know who Dr. David Rosensweet is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I interviewed him a while ago and I was like, I love you. You're just such a great man. And the reason is because he educates women on their symptoms. And we know that. So here's where things could get crazy. We say around perimenopause. So I had a period March 1st, and I call it a baby period. I'm 54.
Right.
So it was like 3 days, not even a real period. I didn't have to wear a tampon, but I did have to wear like a liner. So, and it was somewhat steady. So I call that a period. Some say it's not, but I'm like, it was. So here's what happens at perimenopause. And then when you have thyroid, I'm like, holy shit, is it my thyroid? Is it estrogen? I don't get it. Because when I tested my estrogen, Amie, it was like, I was like, I'm young again. Look at this. My FSH, like all of it. It was like I was not even close to menopause. This would have been, I think, end of February. And then I had a period March 1st.
Right.
All of March, I was okay. But then crash in April. So this just goes to show you how fast things can change with perimenopausal women, especially in the latter stages. So what happened was I was taking my HRT and I'm like, I'm still getting symptoms. This is kind of weird. Maybe I'm taking too much, because Dr. David Rosensweet does show, he has a chart where he shows that sometimes symptoms of too much can look like symptoms of too little, and right? And so I'm like, maybe I need to lay off taking so much of my hormones. Well, I exacerbated my issues and I had the worst. And I'm like, oh my God, now I see how bad menopausal symptoms can get. So in April, I had all of it: the depression, the weight gain, the inability to sleep, the hot flashes. Like I had all of it, not just a little bit of hot flushing, which is when I started HRT. I had just a little bit of hot flashes. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be fine. This was not good.
Yep, I know. That's what happens. That's what happens. So no, I love Rosensweet because he has the same kind of outlook as Dr. Lindsay Berkson. So if you've never interviewed her or listened to her, same thing. And she always references Rosensweet. I think they have done collaborations and whatnot together. So, okay. So what did you do then? Did you change your dose of estradiol and then the symptoms went away, or where are you at now with your hormones?
So I actually, my doctor went on mat leave. So I found a new practitioner here in Canada. It's not that easy to find. So let me make that clear. If any Canadians are listening, there is a place called Science and Humans that's relatively newer. They do bioidentical hormones, and all they do is longevity, menopause, andropause. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
They're in Canada. So I saw them, had blood work, found out that in fact it was definitely not too high. It was like crashed. And they doubled my dose of progesterone and estrogen. And so, that I'm just starting to come back, to be honest. It's only been a couple weeks and I'm just starting to come back from that crash, because women can crash. I felt the crash, Amie.
Well, you know what I love about your story is that you are really sending the message again of just being real, and also here you are, you're a thyroid expert, you deal with nutrition, you've been dealing with this for years, you've been optimizing yourself for years, and something shifted and it was like, uh-oh, here I got to change things up again. Here's some symptoms again. And I always try to tell my audience and my patients, progress is not linear. And just because we have you optimized today doesn't mean that you're going to be optimized a year from now, because or in your case, a month from now, because something could shift dramatically. Something just changes. Number one, we're women with hugely fluctuating hormones. We're much more complex than men. We just have life that occurs. And, to your point earlier, are you exposed to toxins, or do you have an underlying infection that got kicked up, a viral load that shifted your body, or is it just something happened? We don't know what surged your estrogen to where you're like, ooh, all my numbers are like I'm youthful again, and I just had a cycle and I feel great. So literally coming down the other side and into a deep dark hole. Sometimes you don't know, but I think your story is important for listeners to hear, that it's not always linear. And it doesn't mean that everything you've ever done is now shit canned. Everything you've done has built the foundation so that now, I would suspect, you will come back to your normal self, your normal optimized self, much more quickly than, let's say, 2 years ago.
I agree. And then, I always say it's not like you climb a mountain, you reach that peak of optimized health, and then you never have to do anything again. It's like we're constantly changing, and we get a whole new body. What is it? Every decade, a whole new body. And so, of course, we're going to always change. And we have to be able to be flexible enough to change with it, but also to identify it. So the thing is, even in end of April, when was it? Mid-April, both my kids moved back home. It was a lot of stress, a lot of rejigging, a lot of stuff going on, and finding kind of that new normal. That's going to be stressful. So that kind of stuff, when even life changes are going to affect you. We're not robots. And that's the other thing I loved about Dr. Rosensweet. He doesn't treat patients like they're robots. Everybody's so unique.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone is unique. And that's the thing. I mean, that's what you and I try to get out, that message to the world, is you can't do a cookie cutter anything. There's no cookie cutter nutrition plan. There's no cookie cutter supplement plan. There's no cookie cutter thyroid optimization or hormone optimization plan. Everyone is so unique. So talk to me, what do you like to do with your clients with supplements? So kind of go into what are your keystone supplements that you take every day? What do you bring in and out? And what do you like to do when you're working with people?
So to be clear, I haven't worked with clients in a year because I'm focusing on my podcast. So
yourself.
yeah, and writing. I just finished my Essential Thyroid Guide, and I'm writing. I call it my book, and it's called. The working title is Bridging the Gap Between Science and Soul, because I do believe that not everything can be explained by science, but science is important. So, I'm a little bit. You're going to laugh. I'm a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll. I'm a little bit about the woo. I'm a little bit about the science. I'm a little bit about both. And,
Love it.
When it comes to supplementation, I'll tell you this story. This is a really interesting story. I had one client and she was a vegetarian. And you know how it is. Sometimes you get very close and you hear a lot of personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
And she was at a breaking point in her life where, she wasn't sure on where to go. Let's just say she wasn't sure on where she was going in her life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did symptomatology with her, I had a questionnaire. I looked at everything and I'm like, oh my God, girl, you are so low in methylated B vitamins, B complex specifically.
Okay.
And this is one of the foundations that I love for clients, only because when you're under stress, when you're not eating well, when you are having a diet where you are eliminating food groups, you are probably not optimized in your B complex, because B complex is water soluble, in and out. It's in and out. It's in fast, it's out fast.
Mm-hmm.
And even with my kids, I'm like, if there's anything that you're going to take when you're away at university, take a B complex, but methylated. So I'm sure you've seen people will go to whatever drugstore, buy something off the shelf, and they'll buy cyanocobalamin, which is made from cyanide. And it's like, okay, well, not all people, depends on your genetics, but it can do a lot of harm. So B complex is one of those staples. And while I have a really opposing view on different probiotics, I do not believe, and this is going so against the grain, Amie, but I do not believe in soil-based probiotics. And you're probably, you are?
Yeah, I'm aligned.
So here's the thing. I look at this and I'm like, my parents were farmers. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We are talking as old school as it gets. Grew up in old Croatia, farming, poor. They did everything the old way. And so I like to emulate, if I can. I live in Toronto, so it's hard, but I like to emulate how they ate. So eating with the seasons.
Yeah.
And sure, you get a little bit of spore-based probiotics, but through inhalation, through maybe what's left over in the food. I just don't know if I resonate with taking mounds and mounds of soil-based probiotics. However, I do feel that taking a daily multi-strain, human strain probiotic can kind of keep those bacteria at bay. But, if you do the research, they don't proliferate, right? So they're transient. So it's almost like it's kind of keeping everything okay, but it's not like it's creating a perfect environment. So I'm always like, when you take a human strain, it's good for you. But, there are some that I am doing so much studies on. Like I'm starting to take L-reuteri. Have you heard a lot about L-reuteri?
I've heard of it, but go deeper. I don't know enough about it to speak on it.
So L-reuteri has you must know Dr. William Davis. He's the Wheat Belly. He created the Wheat Belly series. So I interviewed him about a year ago, and he talks a lot about making your own L-reuteri. People don't realize how beneficial it is and how it can actually create a better environment. I actually tried to make my own L-reuteri yogurt. It was a bit of a fail. So now I'm just taking it, and I'm just taking it. And, but it can do a lot of beneficial things for brain health, for just overall digestion, and, like people who are anxious, people who have other issues. So, and even for weight loss, for metabolism, it's just one of those strains. And then I've been, taking Akkermansia, but I do
Just
believe,
gonna ask you about that. Okay.
so that's, so there's a gut test that's out now. Have you heard of it? It's called Vitatract or Vitract, something like that. Vitract?
I haven't heard of that one, although I believe somebody may have connected me with those gut people. I usually use Diagnostic Solutions, which has, the GI map that has
Yeah.
that Akkermansia right there.
This one does too.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, what are your thoughts on it? What are you seeing?
So what the only thing I'm going to say, I haven't done it yet, but they do say, I'm going to say I feel it's more hype on this whole connection to like, oh, it's going to work like a GLP-1. Like, I don't see it.
Okay.
I don't see it.
Diving into that research now, just trying to weed through it all. There's a lot of studies out there.
Well, I'm kind of, I don't know. I'm kind of living proof in that. Like, I've been taking it for 2 months steady because I'm testing it. Like, just like you know how you like to test things. I do too. I test things. And like, I don't see anything, but I got a lot of other stuff going on too right now. So maybe I'm not, it's not the perfect environment for me to say it doesn't work, but I don't see it. I'm just taking it because they do say having Akkermansia just is a beneficial environment for your gut microbiome. So that's why I'm doing it. And I'm only going to do 3 months. I'm only going to pulse it because too much is also not good either.
Right. Right. So I have a couple different thoughts for you. Number one, I want to send you Metabolism Fixer because that has the T2 in it and it has suppressa in it, which suppresses the appetite. I want you to stack that with the Akkermansia and see if that bundle doesn't affect your appetite. And obviously, we don't want it to be like a weight loss drug, like we talked about. We don't
Yeah.
want it crushing your appetite to where you're not going to eat your protein, you're not going to want to eat. That's
Right.
bad. But I think if it takes the edge off, that'll be an interesting experiment. My second question to you is because you deal so much with metabolism. I mean, you just said that you got you did a special training or got your degree in metabolic disorders, correct?
I am a certified metabolic balance coach.
Okay,
So
that's amazing. So with that, are you noticing any tie-in with Akkermansia lowering insulin resistance and improving metabolic disease?
ooh, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. I
That'll be
don't
your
know.
job, is to dive into that.
Yeah, because
Research and then pair it with metabolism.
so
Yeah.
interesting because I do find my mom's like this too. She has a higher HbA1c, but hers started much later. It started after 75. And so for me, everything's starting like early, right? Like I feel like, I don't know. I do feel like not having the gland puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage. It's kind of like people who don't have a gallbladder. They kind of have to be a little bit careful about the fat that they eat.
Yeah.
My husband doesn't have a gallbladder. So for him, I'm always giving him ox bile. So by the way, that's another big supplement for people who are listening. If you don't have a gallbladder, or if you're eating a high fat food and you get that gallbladder pain, you can like, if you know you have gallstones, taking ox bile, so important. So important. And you can get higher doses. There is a company, but I don't know if they're in the US. They're called Vitazan. They have a higher dose of ox bile, which is really good for my husband. He never has issues if he has a higher fat food. Now, back to the whole metabolism thing. Since I had my thyroid out, so from age 41 to 54, I have had variances of 25 pounds up and down, up and down.
Yep.
And so for me, I'm always looking for what can I do that's going to keep me the most stable without doing something extreme. That's why I went and I did the program and became a metabolic balance coach, because it's very sensible, where you're eating a variety of foods, which is something I believe that we need to eat a variety of foods, because that's good for our microbiome, right?
Right.
And it's kept me the most stable that I've been since I had my thyroid out.
Oh, that's beautiful. Isn't stability a wonderful place to be? Where you're not gaining weight looking sideways at a brownie. That's what I always say. Like that's how I was before I was optimized. I'm sure that's how you were before you came into this stabilization place.
But anybody who has had thyroid problems would know that like this is very emotional for me, and I'm sure you would feel this too, where you wake up at 3 a.m. and go, holy shit, I'm gaining weight again.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like, and you're like, what do I do now? I've done this diet. I've done keto. I've done this. And you try everything and you wonder. And then I went to Sedona in 2022, and I call her my spiritual hypnotist. And I sat with her for 2 hours, and we worked on clearing limiting beliefs, which is something that I'm a big believer in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because what do they say? They say, oh, once you lose your thyroid, you're going to get fat. Once you hit menopause, you're going to get fat. Everything's going to go downhill. And so I left Sedona with this little box, and it had a crystal on it. And I wrote this after I saw her, and it was my mantra that I worked on with her. And it said, I am thin and I am healthy. And that was in August 2022. And then October was when I had the high HbA1c. The weight was just going up. And then I decided to finish my certification to become a metabolic balance coach. Started November 1st, lost 4% total body fat by December 2022. So what I'm saying is, it's not like she magically waved a wand and said, okay, now you're going to be thin and healthy. But it's like she set me on that trajectory to try and clear some of those limiting beliefs that were there.
Yes. Oh, that's so important. That is so important. I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I think with everything that we've talked about today, from the right thyroid treatment, nutrition, supplementation, all the different things, if you believe that you're fat and nothing's going to work and I'm never going to get better, and this is just a disease I'm going to have to live with, and this and this and this, then you know what the answer is? You're right. Like, you are absolutely, whatever you believe, you are right, because you will self-perpetuate that belief to fruition. It'll show itself one way or another, good or bad.
Yeah. I do believe that. And some people need to get help to figure out how to, and whatever resonates with you may not resonate with me, and vice versa. I do a lot of getting into that theta state.
Yeah.
And visualizing, because I feel I'm that kind of person that I have to, because I can be my own worst enemy, where I get into that spiral. Just like I said, you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're like, oh my God, and then the scale just keeps going up, up, up. And I'm like, I'm 5'2" like you. In university, I was 100 pounds soaking wet. Like, I'm a little person. It's not my genetic composition to be heavy. So why is this going to make me heavy if my doctors and everyone's saying you're optimized, your thyroid is optimized, everything's working perfect. So why would I be heavy?
Right. Right. So what did you, besides the meeting with your woman in Sedona and that little box, do you have a daily practice to really anchor your thoughts in a positive direction so it can continue working on your body? Because just, I mean, even hearing you speak and that at 3 a.m. wake up and what am I going to do in the week coming on? I mean, I do resonate with that. I've been in that position. And then I'm thinking of, oh my gosh, all the women out there that are totally resonating with what you just said, either in the weight department or the other place I hear this is hair. Like, what am I going to do? My hair is falling out. It won't stop. I'm going to be bald. And they're just, their whole day is taken up by that anxiety and those looping, ruminating thoughts about how much worse can this get. Same with weight. So what do you recommend people do? What do you do on the daily?
So you have to, whatever it is, and this isn't about any kind of religion, but if you don't have some sort of a grounding practice, and I'm not talking about that you have to go and buy the earthing bed sheets and sleep on ground. I did do that for a while, by the way. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with it. It's just, for me, it's, yeah, exactly. For me, it's action. So my degree is actually in English literature, so I'm a writer. That's what my go-to is. And I had put it down for many, many years when I was raising younger children. And then I started to pick it up again. And I actually built 2 websites while I was taking care of kids, not working. And one of them was for advocacy for the type of tumor that my daughter had. And one of them was for thyroid. These are so like old. I did this in my 40s, but the writing was extremely therapeutic for me. And I say this to my kids all the time who are now young adults, and they're like, well, I can't really write. I'm like, but nobody's reading this. Like for you, nobody's reading it. You don't have to be good at grammar or anything, but there's something about from the heart putting pen and from the head down to paper. There's something, and I feel like even kids these days, they don't even know how to write cursive. They don't know, like, they don't write. Everything is done. And I think that something is lost there because it can be very powerful when you do that. The other thing is some sort of an energetic clearing. So I used to feng shui people's homes. This was, I brought in a consultant when my daughter and I were sick. I was like, okay, is there bad energy in my house? Like, what's going on? Like, is this, is my house cursed? So bringing in some sort of a clearing practice. So I still to this day feng shui my home, my whole home, according to the annual flying stars. This might be out there for some people, but it's not that hard. There's a lot of help there. And I use, like sage, I think is almost overused. It's become so like almost commercialized. So I just burn a little bit of incense every morning just to kind of clear the space, clearing your space. I walk my dog every single day and I purposely do not walk on the sidewalks. We go in the trails, we go in the forest. Do not put on your headphones. Take those headphones off. Pay attention to what signs are there because often those little signs can give you hope for a change or for something different. Like I feel like we just deflect every day. We deflect and then look for an easy way. Mind you, there are some easy things that I do. I do brain tap or Newcom almost daily, but that helps get my brain there, which I need a little bit of help. That gets me into that theta state. So those are some practices that I feel are extremely powerful for anyone who's looking for a change and you're grasping at straws and trying everything, just like the earthing bed sheets. I mean, I should say that because for some people it works. It
Yeah.
does, but it just didn't
Yeah.
for me. But just saying,
Yeah, exactly. No, I love all of that. And actually you just hit me between the eyes with a statement. So I am going to promise you that I will change that. I too walk my dog every morning and I have my earphones in and I'm answering emails and I'm getting work done. And you're so right. I mean, what I preach to people is don't do that and be with your dog, be in your environment, be in nature. And so you just kind of slapped me upside the head with that one. So I'll change it.
but think about it. Like you see people jog, like I will, okay, I'm like, I've turned into this such a geek. I'll go for my walks and then I'll be like, oh, and my dog's name's Gracie. I'll be like, Gracie, look at that cardinal. It's like right there in front of us. And then somebody will go jogging by with headphones on. They have no idea what's going on around them. And I'm like, you're missing it. You're missing this,
Yeah, I know. It's true. It's so true.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Sandy, this has been such an amazing 2 hour long conversation. I absolutely love it. We jive on so many things.
We do.
I mean, we could probably keep going, but we both have to wrap it up and get on with our day. So for my audience, can you tell them where they can find you? And we're also going to put in, you had mentioned this earlier about the, I'm trying to find it here. Wait, where did it go? The Essential Thyroid Guide. Yeah, it's on Amazon. So we're going to put that link into the show notes for both the United States and Canada. I love that you wrote this. I love that you wrote an Essential Thyroid Guide. So many people need it. So can you tell people where they can find you? And then we'll put that link in the show notes as well.
Yes, it's just Sandy K Nutrition everywhere. Anywhere you do social media, just look for Sandy K Nutrition. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Rumble, YouTube. I'm trying a Substack as well, but I'm finding that it's taking away from what I really want to do, which is finish my book. And the Essential Thyroid Guide, the reason I wrote it is because when I started to do my research, I didn't really want this 250-page clinical book. I wanted the Coles notes to get me started, which is why I wrote this, because it gives you the Coles notes. It's not going deep in a clinical sense on things that some people don't want. If you want that, get a clinical book and learn about it. The Essential Thyroid Guide is just simply, what do I need to know as the basics? Because people don't even realize, like what we were talking about, that toxins, could be a major factor in thyroid health. So that's why I wrote that. But yes, I'm Sandy K Nutrition everywhere.
That makes it so easy.
So easy. Yeah.
It's so easy.
Yeah.
And then for your people to kind of close out your podcast. So since this is a joint podcast.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And where can we find you?
So I couldn't get Dr. Amie everywhere. That's actually what I wanted. So Instagram is at Dr. Amie Hornaman. And then Facebook, we have a Facebook group called Girl Fix Your Thyroid. Anybody can join it. And in there, you can post your questions, you can post your labs. I'm in there answering. For the people that are like, this is what I'm on, and these are my labs, and I feel like garbage. What should I do? Or I haven't been diagnosed yet. These are my labs. What should I do? Do I have a problem? I don't know. My doctors keep telling me I'm normal. So we do have that Facebook group, and that's where I like to shuttle people, because that's a great place to kind of get to know me, and then I can help you free of charge in that group. And then you can figure out what your next step is. So definitely Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and then the Thyroid Fixer podcast, of course, that you are on, that we are joint recording right now.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. I loved chatting with you. You know what we need to do? We need to do a second parter on thyroid and longevity. I don't know. I've been digging deep on the research on that. And man, like it might not be sexy as a topic for longevity and health span, but I think we can make it sexy.
It's important. It's
Yeah.
important because I would love to hear your research on thyroid and longevity and how that is connected. I mean, regenerative longevity, and those are the buzzwords these days. So people are interested for sure.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
We will. All right. Thank you so much, Amie.
And thank you, Sandy. I love this.
Yeah.
Has been so much fun.
Yeah. Thanks. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Be sure to share it with someone you know might benefit. And always remember, when you rate, review, subscribe, you help to support my content and help me to keep going and bringing these conversations to you each and every week. Join me next week for a new topic, new guest, new exciting conversations to help you live your best life.